All right, my friends, we're going to do a little review of what happened in class today. We talked about catching quotes. We were looking at paraphrase work that we've been doing and figuring out why we use those paraphrases at all. What's the point? So we talked about something called catching. Catching is basically thinking about catching a ball. You need two hands, one on either side. And imagine the ball is your quote, the thing that you want to use to support your ideas. So you need to have something before and after the quote to catch it in an academic essay. And here, the thing you need before a quote is 1A and 1B on this list, and then after 2A and 2B. 1A is to connect the quote to a previous sentence, which is something like a transition, and 1B is to simply introduce the quote with academic language, the author's name, the author's information, and a signal verb. After the quote, you need to restate what the quote means, and that's your paraphrase. That's what we mean by using paraphrases in your academic writing. And then 2B is to explain specifically how the quote supports your idea from your writing. That's really all there is to it, but there's a lot of practice and process to do this right. Our goal is to include one quote in your essay revision this week, and that quote can come from an article you are reading for homework for my class, or from an article that you research yourself from the Palomar College Library database, which looks like this. And that's for the green team specifically, and there will be a separate video about that skill. But if we look here, think about catching, and we talk about signal verb. Just to let you know what that means, signal verbs are simply verbs that signal there is a quote or a paraphrase coming up next. You usually think of this in terms of the word like says, but these are the academic ways to say that. Something like acknowledges, adds, argues, complains, concludes, states, writes. All of these types of words introduce academic quotation in catching or academic paraphrases. What it looks like in practice is a paragraph like this. I'll ask you to pause it so you can read that. It's a full academic paragraph. There's information before and after the whole quote piece. And to look at it more specifically, we have it here. I've highlighted the first step before the quote and then the last step after the quote. So we have 1A, 1B before the quote, and 1A is transition. Usually it signals that there's a quote coming up. That research has been done, for example. Like here, it says there are many articles that show blah, 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 the topic you're talking about. 1B, you need to have the author's name. In this case, we only have the author's first name, Pedro, and then information about the author, who they are. Let the reader know who this person is. Here is a person from, or a student from Cerrito College. And then we have our signal verb states right before the quote, and there's a comma after the signal verb. Then we have our quote right here, and you'll notice at the end there is a citation. For this class, you don't have to worry about citations, but you will be asked to show where your quote comes from eventually. After the quote, 2A is our paraphrase. This is what we have been practicing in class. So you want to restate, and there's a way to introduce a restatement like this. In other words, the author believes, but there are other ways to introduce paraphrases like this. This different type of language introduces a paraphrase in academic writing. Basically, the author is saying that, the author isn't, in other words, the author believes that, the author is insisting that, where X is you put the author's name in. In our example, the author's name is Pedro. 2B explains why you chose this quote, why you think this paraphrase helps support your ideas. The idea with catching a quote is you have an idea in your writing, but the reader might not just believe you. They want to see somebody else has a similar idea. So you bring in a similar idea from someone else and you explain how it connects to your idea. So you have more proof that your idea is probably a correct idea. So we focused on catching in class a lot today. And we did an activity where we looked at a paragraph that one of you wrote for your assignment last week. And then we put this quote into the paragraph. So the place where X is here, I explained in class, was a logical place to have a quote to support someone's idea. So I asked students to put this quote here from Dan Barrett into the paragraph. using our catching steps. And that was a lot of work we did today. And the end result was something like this. We have the paragraph as it was that the student wrote, and then we added everything in the middle here. We added a transition and underlined language that you can use in your own transitions. Then we have an introduction to the quote. We give the quote, and then we restate the quote. This is our paraphrase. And then we have a sentence that explains why this quote is important, and then we move on with the rest of our essay. This is what I'm asking you to do for your revision of your essay. I would like you to create an essay that has one body paragraph that has a quote that supports one of your ideas. Again, the quote can come from the article you're reading for homework, or you can find an article somewhere else, like the library database, which again, specifically the green team or anyone looking for a challenge, I will lead you through how to do that. And that's what we talked about today. Thank you so